Hi, everyone. Thanks for attending today's webinar. I'm very excited. We're going to be talking about selling your Amazon business with Yael Kabili and Michal Balmwald-Oran, founders of Fortinet, which is an investment banking firm that helps Amazon sellers sell their businesses. This is a hot topic. I imagine that you're all going to have a bunch of questions. That's great. We welcome questions. We want this to be an open, casual but very informative conversation. I've got my friend Andrew Johnson with me. He is an account executive and affiliate marketing manager here at Takeometrics. I'm Liz Downing. I am the e-commerce marketing manager here. Do a whole lot of webinars. You guys see me a lot, probably getting sick of me. Just a few housekeeping things. We are recording this session, so it will come to you via email. That's for the first question. First 17 questions I usually get is, are we recording? So yes, we're recording. We do open questions. There is a questions section in your GoToWebinar panel, so just pop your questions in there. We'll take them as we go along, and we'll leave a little time at the end for Q&A if there's still some outstanding questions. So without further ado, let's get started. We've got a jam-packed agenda that we're not going to share because we're just going to roll through it all. But Yael and Michal, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So Fortinet, correct me if I'm wrong, but Fortinet came to exist because of this insane surge of investment companies and aggregators and roll-ups and all of this interest in buying FBA businesses. Is that you saw a need and you decided to meet that need?
So maybe I'll start. I think so. It didn't start with the aggregator. We actually started before the aggregator, before Thrasio, or maybe around the same time. But it did arise out of a need. We were working with sellers since 2015. My background, I'm an attorney. In addition to Fortinet, I also own a law firm that deals with e-commerce and Amazon specifically. And when we saw that, I mean, a lot of clients of the firm wanted to exit and sell their business, and many Amazon sellers in general spoke with us, and Michal and I saw that while there were brokers, there wasn't any investment bank in the e-commerce field. So while brokers work more as intermediary between buyers and sellers, there was no one really on the sell side only, focusing on the seller to get the highest possible value out of this business. And that's how we formed Fortinet. It was in 2018. And it grew very fast. We have a third partner who's also who was an Amazon seller. He sold his business with us and joined us. He's also a CPA originally. And Michal's background, maybe you can say about yours.
Okay. I'm also a lawyer, a commercial lawyer, and before forming Fortinet, I was the VP Business Development of an international company. I dealt a lot in M&A, in deals, large deals, at least much larger than the deals that currently are happening on the Amazon space. And then I decided together with Yael that no real solution for those businesses, sellers, exist in the market. It's not, we hear even today sometimes sellers that tell us, we haven't decided yet to list our business, and we think that businesses are not something that you should list. This is not a shoe or a notebook that you sell on Amazon. It's a much broader operation, and it should be treated differently. This is why Fortinet was established.
That's awesome. I think that in a frenzy like this, it would be very easy for a business to make a hasty decision. And for you to be on the seller side of things, supporting sellers, helping them make good decisions, helping them get ready, helping them get to the point where they're going to actually receive the most for their business, I think that's great. And it's just in line with exactly my obsession with third-party sellers on Amazon. Let's help them the most. So I've got a ton of questions. I am assuming that the audience is going to have a ton of questions once they warm up a little bit. But I think the first thing that we listed when we told everybody that we were having this webinar is that we were going to talk about when is the right time to sell your Amazon business. So regardless of like what type of seller you are, or like what size of seller you are, or maybe that has something to do with it. You've gotten too big. Like, what are you seeing with people that are actually timing it perfectly? What is that time? What are the factors that go into that?
So maybe I'll take this one. I think that first of all, in order to have a best time to sell your Amazon seller, you first need to decide that you want to sell your business. So if a seller decides that this is the strategy for him to sell the business, then the next question is when to do it. What is the right time? And this second question, to some extent, it depends on the first one, because if you want to sell the business, then why do you want to do that? Are you under any rush? Something that you must do immediately because you don't get along with your partner, because you feel that the business is stuck and limited by your capacity and your capabilities. And then, so these questions are really important when you want to answer the question on when to sell. In general, of course, you must sell a growing and successful business. So whenever you want to sell the business, you should make sure, or at least hope that it will be in a position in which you really believe that it can keep on growing. You can create a projection that will prove these beliefs of yours. You'll have a working plan, how this business is about to keep on growing. This is a good time to sell the business. On the other hand, once you sell the business, if you are not under no rush, then you do want to enjoy the growth of the business, or to bear the fruits of the business which you created. So it's a kind of a balance. And again, if you sell the business because you feel that you are about to hit a glass ceiling and so much more is needed to keep on growing it, or if you believe that the risk on managing the business become too burdensome for you, then you need to just find the right time, which is related to this balance between how much of the profit you can add to your total performance before you get to sell the business, and how much you so-called leave on the table. So that's in general, in that context, it's worthwhile mentioning that usually those deals, when you sell a business, the business is being measured based on the past performance, so the recently past performance. In some of the deals, it is possible to present also the projection. So there may be a look on the future which support the overall valuation of the business. So again, balancing between past and future, that's the tricky question. Maybe Yael can share some examples. We have, I think, iconic example of cases where waiting for delaying the time of the sale benefited a lot the seller, and vice versa, by the way.
Yeah, we had, so I'm thinking about two cases. One was just recently, just a couple of months ago, where the seller actually came to us and wanted to sell the business. We always, start with the strategic thinking, when's the right time? And when we prepared the profit and loss report, when we saw the profits of this year versus last year, we saw that every month, the gap between this year and last year was 60K. Now 60K can be, there's a multiple, let's say 5, okay, just as an example. So it's 300K per month. So if we wait just 4 months, okay, just wait 4 months, it can be over $1 million in the valuation at the end. And the business wasn't that big, so it was almost double what he could get now. So sometimes it just makes sense to wait, but sometimes you can you can get, we can create structures that take into consideration this growth, as Michal said. Another example is a seller that came to us at the beginning of 2020. It was interesting because he wanted a pretty high valuation for that time, and we got him that valuation, the multiple, I mean. And then he said, listen, I'm not sure I should sell. So we sat with him for several days and we prepared projections for the year, and we realized he's right. He's gonna, if we look at every product, there will be a significant growth. So, in his case, the number was just insane. I mean, he grew from maybe $2-3 million to $5 million in profit. And when you think of the exit and you apply the multiples, you can do the math. So when to sell is, like Michal said, it's always when you're growing, you don't want to leave too much on the table, but on the other hand, you want to sell it when it's growing, and you can squeeze the lemon, but until a certain, until a certain point. So I think that the best thing is to have a strategic plan, to prepare the projection, and then think of, every aspect before you make the decision.
That's great. We do have a couple of questions, and they might kind of get into the financial analysis that you do and that we need to talk about. Andy, did you have something?
Yeah, to kind of go along the lines of what we're talking about so far. When a brand or a distributor come to you, right, asking for advice about when to sell their business, do you guys usually recommend they do something that's outside of the norm of just being profitable in general, or is it just more about following best practices to help them make sure they're doing the right things to be successful?
So it depends on when this brand wants to sell the business. In general, there isn't really a big difference on what is good for the sale of the business as opposed to the management of the business. With maybe one distinction here, which is between long and short-term considerations. So if you want to sell your business, for example, in the short term, and you have just thought of new product to launch, and launching new product is not something that you do on a usual basis, then probably you create some loss, which only the buyer is going to profit from. But in general, so there are such considerations. Other consideration could be cleanups in the business. If you engage employees that you don't really need them on for the ongoing operations of the business, so either you can really circle them out and put them and allocate them for missions which are not and cannot be conceived as part of the management of the business, or you should just, let them go because you don't want to have their expenses as impacting your profit. So there may be cleanups like that. It may be another consideration, but this is a usual recommendation of ours, which becomes stronger before the sale of the process, is not to take irregular risk. Business risk endangers, I mean, as it may sound, so put a risk and it endangers the business. Higher risk for the business, it's may endanger its existence mainly when we talk about Amazon businesses. Okay, if you play with the Amazon terms of sales on any significant matter, if you buy reviews, manipulate reviews, this puts your business at risk and the value goes down. So we would not recommend to do that. Usually, by the way, not that you must be a saint in order to be able to sell your business, but usually should manage it reasonably. And before the sale, you should better be more inclined toward clean operation and be well organized. So usually, to sum it up, what I've just said, usually we would advise a seller, do what you do always, keep on doing what you do, keep on managing the business as best as you can. You don't want to get blind by the idea that a lot of money is about to enter your bank account and forget to manage the business. But at the same time, maybe improve a bit some of the processes and pay attention to specific things. But I'm sorry, I need to add just one more point. If you have more time before you go to sell the business, then you can consider to make deeper changes. We have an example where we advise a seller to optimize PPC expenses, and actually this increased his profit from 18 to 26%. And he ran the business this way for more months, and of course it impacted the overall value of the business eventually.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah, this go back, by the way, we're often asked, I mean, what Michal said is exactly true. When you have, it depends on how much time you have. So we're often asked, I have 6 months, and my plan, you know, I'm going to sell it in 6 months, and my plan during that time is to go to retail. So I'm going to start, you know, an entire operation so that I can maximize the value of that exit. I think that, you know, when you have only 6 months, starting something completely new and yourself, not hiring someone who's, you know, who's not going to hurt your, I mean, taking your focus out of Amazon and then taking it to retail and starting something new. I don't know if I would do that if I had only 6 months. If I had a year or two, that, you know, that's maybe something else. The alternative is maybe to have someone external that, you know, doesn't take your focus out of Amazon, and then that person will do it for you. So if, you know, if you gain profit from that, then great, and that will add on to the exit. And if not, then that's okay. But we really don't want it to hurt the business. And, you know, we've seen that. We've seen sellers trying new things, investing a lot in Shopify for a short period of time, and it didn't work out. And then the Amazon started going down. Or we've seen sellers who knew they're going to sell, so they stopped launching. They stopped, you know, pushing the products. They stopped, some of them, ordering inventory because they thought that would hurt. Very important to keep running the business as if, you know, as if you're not selling, you know, on the one hand, and be very focused on what you usually do. And if you're very good at, you know, launching new products or launching new variations or going to other marketplaces, then do that. Focus on what you do best.
Super. So we have a lot of questions. I think it makes sense. One thing that we were talking about earlier before we went live is that there are brands being purchased, but there are also resellers being purchased. And someone has asked, please speak about the difference in business value if you resell other vendors' products or if you have your own brand, or it's a blend of both. Is there a big difference in interest, or is it just based on the health of the account and revenue?
So there's a market for everything, right? I mean, everything is sellable. I can tell you that we feel the difference between a brand, your own brand, a private label, if you like, and a reseller. When you're buying a private label, you know exactly what you have. You have, you know, you're buying the IP, you're buying the trademark, you're buying the listing with the reviews, you're buying the copyrights and the images. You know exactly what you're buying, and you're looking at, you know, at the future and how it looks like, and you get these assets and you continue to operate these assets. When you're buying a reseller business, it really depends what, you know, what's in there. If it's a reseller business and the reseller doesn't have any agreement with his suppliers, and, you know, they supply 90 shoes every month at a good price, but tomorrow they can stop. Okay, tomorrow they'll say, you know, listen, we have one big customer, he becomes the official distributor, you're out. What happens to the buyer? They bought something that, you know, doesn't exist anymore. So I think that, you know, the risk in these businesses could potentially be higher, but there are businesses that could be very interesting if you have exclusivity agreements, for example. Okay, if you're selling the brand and you're the only one selling the brand, and you have an agreement for 10 years, and and things like that, then that could be at the end quite similar than selling a private label. So I think that generally speaking, if there are no agreements or no strong agreements, the valuation can be lower. And we also see at Fortinet that the level of interest is a little lower than or I don't know if a little, maybe lower, I would say, than private labels.
What about FBM versus FBA? Are you seeing that, regardless if it's a reseller with exclusivity or if it's a brand or like some mix of the two, if they're mostly FBA, is that more attractive to a purchaser, or does that just really not matter as long as the business is running profitably?
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's running properly, but I think that most buyers, if I'm really trying to talk generally, they're looking for businesses that are easy to run and don't require, a crazy management and a lot of hours and a lot of employees. And so FBA kind of answers, and most FBA businesses, you have one manager, one owner of the business and maybe 2 employees, 1 or 2. And when you compare that to businesses, to FBM businesses, it can be a little more complicated. But again, there's there's a buyer for every business. So those businesses could be interesting, and if the seller has chosen that path, there's a reason. If the seller doesn't choose FBA, there's probably a reason for that. So it's a case-by-case basis. If I'm trying to say generally, they look at FBA businesses, but some FBM businesses could be interesting, and many of the businesses we represent are, have the majority FBA and some FBM. So yeah.
Is there any kind of trend with categories, or any certain categories like really hot right now, or more attractive, or does it just sort of run the gamut?
So this again, it depends on the buyer. There are buyers that are more focused on specific categories, and others that shy away from certain categories, and others that are generally category agnostic. It may be expected that products that their success was related only or mainly to Amazon or to some trendy impact would be less demanded businesses. But other than that, whenever there is a solid business case and the business is sustainable and they represent future growth and success, then it will be valuable to multiple potential buyers.
Okay, great. So we're getting a lot of questions about multiples. Does it make sense to talk about, because we talked before we did this, about profit and loss and how that's the first step of your negotiation. Does it make sense to talk about that before we start talking about multiples and valuation and what size is most attractive and all that kind of stuff? You tell me, you're the experts.
It just makes sense to remember that whenever we evaluate those businesses based on multiples, it starts with identifying what the multiple will be applied on, which is a big deal. Okay, so everyone needs to remember, you want to sell your business. By the way, if you want to manage your business as well, you should have very clear financials. But if you want to sell your business, you must have a very detailed calculation of your profit, and which is suitable for your own business. Which means there are businesses that we have no alternative but to measure the profitability by product, and other businesses where it is less important. You may see businesses that it is very important to be able to measure and analyze the business per geography or per channel. So you should be minded to that, how how to actually evaluate your financial performance. And then, of course, when you calculate the SDE, the SDE, which is the profit, okay, or the operational kind of operational profit, then you should take into consideration or consult with the right people what can be added back out of your expenses in order to actually reflect a higher profit. This can include add backs and other adjustments and pro forma calculation. So that's the first step. For that reason, in a market which evaluates businesses by multipliers, then you must make sure that your profit represents your business well and in the best manner. And then now we can discuss multiples.
The profit, I'll just add to, regarding the P&L, when we call it the first step of the negotiation, remember that, each dollar can be $5, $6, $4. So when you have this expense, I mean, I'll give you an example. We had a client that was using air freight the entire year. And so we calculated if he did use air freight, the expenses would be probably 150 or 200K less. Okay. So we negotiated with the buyer and we explained, you will not use air freight. So we want to adjust the profit and add back this expense. So 200K, you apply a multiple of, let's say, 5. That's $1 million. So really every dollar, every part of this P&L is important, and that's where we see a lot of mistakes. Where sellers that are many sellers sell their business directly to the buyers, and the buyer prepares the P&L. These are things that many sellers don't think about. So just like that, they left $1 million or $500,000 because the P&L wasn't prepared as one should, or you didn't think about all the potential add backs and adjustments. So it's a very important part, and for when we prepare the P&L, we call it a smart P&L, or we make sure that we've covered everything, and the first step of that negotiation is what is the profit to which we apply the multiple, and then we can talk about multiples.
Is there a scale, like a business size, where you see multiples increasing exponentially? Eric asks. He had several questions, so I'm trying to tackle him all at once.
Yeah. So first of all, it's important to understand that the word exponentially is relevant to this whole market. Everything that is happening here is exponential. So this relates to any trend that we see. We see something today, in 3 weeks' time, boom, it's a big deal. We see indications all the time, and then they are becoming a phenomena. As of multiples, first of all, it's a kind of wild zone. There isn't any scientific way to really evaluate how much of a multiple you can get. We can look back at any given time at previous transaction and try to conclude out of what was done before, what will be the multiple on the next deal if we compare the parameters and the points which impact the valuation. But it's not a clear. You cannot get a really clear view. The only way to know, and I will not elaborate too much on that because I'm sure that we'll get to it, but the only way to know what is the maximum multiple that you can get is actually to work diligently and make sure that you tap the market and that your business was presented to all relevant potential buyers, and the right process was taken place. As of what I can say, that there are those common factors that usually are being looked at, and these make businesses more attractive than others. So size of the business is very much relevant, but it may have different impact on the relative multiple at different times. So So there may be that at some point in time, the larger businesses would get higher multiples very easily. And these days, we see that also the medium-sized businesses get very, very good multiples because they enjoy a larger amount of demand among more and more buyers that maybe cannot afford themselves to buy those really big businesses, and then there is a lot of demand focused there. So again, we can talk about multiples and what gets a higher multiple than other for ours, and I don't think that we will ever cover this.
Yeah, we could give a few examples maybe of those parameters that take the multiples up. So there's obviously the size of the business. By the way, several times what we do is we integrate, we join two businesses together so that they'll be larger and then they enjoy a higher valuation. But so there's the size of the business, the reviews, the ages, as Michal said, of the account. There's a difference between an account that was a store that was started in the last year than one that's there for 5 years. One of the most important factors is the growth. So a growing account gets a higher multiple than a flat business or a declining business. A business that's declining is sellable, but just gets lower multiples. Patents, that also gets the multiples up. Being on several channels for some of the buyers, not all of them, but for some of them it is an advantage. So several factors. One of the we feel that it really depends on the type of business. There's when you have, for example, the number of SKUs, for many buyers, the less SKUs, the higher the valuation. They want as few SKUs as possible because they need to manage all these accounts after they buy them. So they want few SKUs. But for others, they're not buying 20 businesses, they're buying only one. And when you're buying only one Amazon business, you don't want only all your money on one product. So you want several products, you want 20 SKUs maybe. What we can tell is to selling a business with 200 or 300 SKUs is sometimes more difficult than 20 SKUs. But that's very general and really depends on the buyer. So that the main factors, and then there are those where buyers are different.
We have so many good questions. Andy, do you have one while I sort through?
Where do you see
Yeah.
the questions? I don't see them.
I should have made you an organizer so you could see them too, but I've made the mistake of doing that before, and I've had panelists that just stopped talking and started typing answers. And I know that you wouldn't do that, but that's a matter of course. I spring them on you instead, which is maybe not the best thing to do.
So I had a question for you guys. I know you mentioned earlier about potentially timing the sale of your business based more on like internally, like maybe your inventory or things like that. But do you find in your experience doing this, are there like buyer buying and selling markets? Are there certain times just based on the market you might want to sell now or hold off, or has it been pretty consistent since you've been doing this?
The market has been, I mean, it's a good question, especially lately, because the market is just crazy. And so a lot of sellers are asking us, I mean, will it stay the same? Will it keep growing? I mean, will multiples keep going up like they do now, or will the market go down again? It's hard to tell. I mean, we feel that with all the money that has been raised lately, it's not going to go anywhere in the next year or two. It's hard to predict again, but there's over $3 billion. These are just the aggregators. There are many more buyers in the industry. So generally speaking, it's a good market now, and it's probably going to be a good market in the next year or two. Now, what will be the future? We don't know. Sorry, I cut you, Michal.
No, you gave a perfect answer. I just want to add, in the balance of things, that the market is good and can be worse, but also better. So it's I don't know. We cannot have real answer to this. We do know that the level of demand today is huge. This is what we know. It's a heaven, you know, to sell your business today. I think that it's the most fun experience on that sense, at least. You feel important and desired, and you get so much attention from so many players in the market, and of course the result is in accordance.
We had several questions when we talked about large businesses are attractive, mid-sized businesses are attractive, and we've had lots and lots of people ask, what do you consider a large-sized business versus a mid-sized business?
So for us, and maybe not for us, actually all the market is not big size. When we're looking at you know, single, or doesn't matter if a store, Amazon store, or a few Amazon stores that are being sold together, still these are not big size deals. But comparing to the space, and according to our discussion with different buyers, and by the way, not only seller ask us where we think the market is going to, but also buyers are asking the same question. No one knows. So per discussions that we hold with buyers, we understand that what would be considered as really large transaction, large business, would be business with a profit of $5-6 million and above. Of course, 10, 15, 20 will be larger. These are the large businesses. Okay, anything between, I would say, 2 million and 5 would be considered as medium, and below that would be tend towards the more smaller businesses.
Okay, great. That's a great clarification, because we had a lot of people asking that. What about, so my friend Chris is here. Hi, Chris. And he asks, are you seeing large Fortune 500 brands entering the brand buying game? So like, other than the aggregators and other types of buyers, there are, he said, like, say a P&G competing to buy an upcoming Amazon native shampoo brand. And have you bumped into Amazon as a competitive buyer of upcoming Amazon brands yet? Just curious.
So we've been in touch with multiple companies that are part of this luxury you know, community, and so the answer, I don't know if any of them have already completed an acquisition, but they are, at least part of them are looking to do that.
Awesome. Oh gosh, there's so much. So let's talk about the buying space. Like, who are the players here? We just asked, are big brands players? Maybe they are starting to be, but since this has been going on for a while, let's categorize, if you're going to sell your business, who the players are that you could potentially sell that business to.
So they are the aggregators, okay? Those groups that raised money with the purpose to acquire such businesses. These will be called the aggregators. And then there are large Amazon sellers themselves that are that emerged out of the Amazon seller space, and they become a kind of an aggregator themselves, either in small or larger scale. So we see them as buyers as well. They are private equity and VCs, and they are strategic buyers. These will be beauty company that is looking to expand into Amazon by acquiring a beauty brand on Amazon. So this will be a strategic buyer. And there are kind of more private buyers, people, businessmen in other fields, or just people that are looking at it as a very good investment, that are interested in acquiring such businesses. So actually, there is everything there. I mean, anyone with money in his pocket is a potential buyer.
COVID has brought many new buyers into the space of, you know, any kind. We feel that, I mean, there are many more than before 2020.
It's accelerated e-commerce. I was talking to somebody yesterday and I said e-commerce has been sort of in its infancy, and what COVID has done is created like a terrible twos like we never knew. It has launched into toddlerhood and maybe even young child mode from it's just I'd say I think that our data says like maybe 5 years, maybe a 5 year acceleration beyond where it would have been if there hadn't been COVID-19. So it's created not only this amazing phenomenon that's going on, but it's also created tremendous growth for a lot of the brands that we work with. And it's created utter devastation in other areas of the industry. It's been such a mix. Sorry, I just had to soapbox about that for a minute. Because I mean, like, who's ever seen anything like this? It's been crazy. So we've had a couple of people ask about timing. Like how far in advance of being ready to sell should we engage or have our P&L or, you know, our profit loss reviewed to optimize for sale? We had another guy say, I'm thinking about doing it in about 2 years. I have businesses I'm not going to sell. I have one that I might sell. If it's 2 years in advance, is it worth it to go ahead and get in touch with you and like get the ball rolling?
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer that. I guess the sooner the better, because there are things that can be changed now and cannot be changed later. So when we start the process, when we have a client that wants to sell in a year or at the end of the year, there are many clients who want to sell at the end of the year because they want to enjoy their Christmas business, and they want to sell by the end of Q4. When we start early, we do several things that can't be really relevant when you do it at the last minute. The first step, as I said, we prepare the P&L, and then you understand your business better. So some things come out of the P&L. The example that Michal gave earlier with the PPC, this is something that came out immediately out of the P&L. I mean, we saw that the profit wasn't high; it was around 18%. And we saw that everything was around the advertising. We saw that the costs were higher than the average business in that category. And so we focused on that. And he had almost a year to, he changed it. And then over a year, the profit was 8% higher just because of that change. So that's one example. Another example is the taxes. In some cases, when we start the business, we start talking with our clients about taxes and if they're aware of the taxes they're going to pay. So it really depends on the country in which they are. But we just have a client in Europe where the client was living here, but the business was there in another country, and his partner was in a third country. We advised him to take on, one of the large consulting and agencies in taxes that everybody know, like PwC and those firms. And together with them, he made a plan. At the end of the plan, he actually moved to another country, and that saves him over $1 million, or it can save a lot of money. So that's a change that you could not do if you're doing it at the last minute. And these are just examples. Sometimes it's about IP. So we're looking at the business. We're trying to find if there is maybe a patent or a design patent to register copyright, so that we can take again up the valuation of the business. One purpose, it's always the same purpose, maximizing the value of that exit. So the earlier we come in, the better we or any other consultant that does that can maximize that value. Sometimes there's nothing to optimize. Sometimes the business is just perfect. The seller knows exactly where she is or where he is, and it's just okay. Let's continue and wait. And sometimes there's a lot to do. In most cases, there's at least something to do.
So I agree a lot with what Yael said. I want to add another dimension to that, which is more relevant to medium and large businesses, and this is to get closer to the market. It's a strategic, important decision to sell a business, and you asked before about the right timing. So part of it is to identify what the market has to offer you. So even if you don't want to sell your business today, you should start and be educational about your opportunities in the market. We have cases where we discussed a potential sale of a business with a buyer for a year until this specific buyer bought the business during the time that the business grew so much. So they met eventually. So we discussed the idea, we explored the matter. Sometimes you need to cook this for a longer time, mainly for the larger businesses. It is worthwhile doing it.
We have a couple questions about, and I know that's skipping over, and I do want to talk about determining your right price, auction, finding the right buyer, how you can help with that. I think that's an important piece of this puzzle. But people are asking, does a buyer take all assets, like including social media accounts, everything outside of the channel that they're selling? I would imagine yes, but I don't know. So you tell us.
Yes, the buyer takes over everything, all the assets relating to that brand or to the account if you have several brands. So it's they take over the trademark, they take over the copyrights, that are attached to the images and the videos that you have. They take over your Facebook account and your Instagram. Sometimes sellers have, I'm thinking about our last migrations, a Walmart account and an eBay account and a Shopify account, everything. They take over everything and they just continue. In some cases, there's an agreement between the buyer and the seller that the seller will just operate something specific. But these are rare. In most cases, they just continue everything and take over all the assets. By the way, it's usually an asset purchase. They don't buy the company, they buy the assets of the company. So you stay with your company and they just buy the assets.
Interesting, because that dovetails nicely into a couple other questions. So included in those assets, if someone is their own manufacturer, that's the buildings, the machinery, vehicles, all of the physical assets as well. So all the virtual assets and business assets, but also the physical assets.
So that depends. This is really depends. It depends what is the business and then who is the buyer. So for example, if there is a relatively small business, we have discussed with one like that, relatively small businesses of sales backed with relatively large investment in machinery and building, etc. Then unless there is a really strategic advantage in this investment, if the business needs to be judged by the sales, then it's a problem. So it all depends. And sometimes there is another Amazon business that we have a company for a while that has its own assembling facility, which is an inherent part of the business. So in that case, the answer is yes. There are businesses with print on demand, and here the operation is also an important part of the business, and the answer would be yes. So it depends on the business. Naturally, most of the Amazon FBA private label businesses are people are just the team itself that order products from third-party suppliers, and then it doesn't come with all of that.
Is anyone interested in buying a 1P brand? Just curious, because we did have somebody ask, like a vendor, like somebody who's
yeah. Yes, I mean, again, I mean, a vendor account at the end, if you're the owner of the brand, it's just the way you've been selling through Amazon, but the asset is the same. You're still the owner of the brand. It's still a brand that's been generating, profits. And if it is, and the margins are good, there's no real difference between the two.
Great, that's helpful. So let's talk about, okay, everything is looking good, profitability is great, we've done all the things that we need to do. Now it's time to set our price and start entertaining offers. How does a business get those offers? And and how do they decide, really?
Right. Yeah. So, you go ahead.
So maybe before, Yael, maybe you can relate to the process itself, but I want to say something more in the principal level, and then so you want to have a very vivid and professional and deep discussion with the market over the valuation of your business. The only way to do it is to engage with different potential buyers. Recently, we have encountered a case where a buyer actually submitted a kind of an offer which he claimed to be a very good offer, and then he said, okay, you want to keep on discussing this offer, I'm fine, but I want you to sign an LOI just to give me exclusivity for the sake of the discussion of this offer only. So it's not an LOI over the business, the deal itself, but on the opportunity to discuss with you the deal terms. This was a kind of innovative, I believe, requirement from a buyer. Of course, the seller did not accept this proposal in this case, but I think that it emphasizes what is the strength of this process that we will describe. The fact that you are checking live what are your alternatives, and each such alternative knows that you make this sanity check or comparison within the whole market, creates the real an outcome in which you get really what you deserve.
Yeah.
Right?
So the process that we're talking about, but I mean, we spoke about the getting the smart P&L, and then there's a step where you present the business. So you want to prepare a very strong presentation about the business that kind of wraps everything and shows all the advantages of the business and what a buyer could do with it. And once you have that, you have a very strong presentation about your business, the P&L that's adjusted and smart. And the third step, which we think is the best, is to conduct an auction. So there's a huge difference if you speak with one or two buyers, you get an offer, you can negotiate with that particular buyer until a certain point. It's you and them. And then there's a process where they all know they're in a competitive process. They all know that there are hundreds of buyers bidding on that business, and if they want it, they'll bid higher. So what happens is that we usually see, several bids around the same, the same size or maybe a similar offer, and then there's one or two for which the business is just worth much more. And they know they're in this process, they know it's a competitive process, and they will not, if they want the business, they will not lose it. So they'll give their best. So you get to the highest possible bid, and then you negotiate. That's the best process. Of course, there's the negotiations are not only around the price. That's a mistake that we often see. We've had a client recently who told us, listen, I spoke with a buyer, I did it myself, I got a 6x multiple on that business. And so we said, wow, terrific. What's the structure? And so he said it's 2x upfront, and then 2x in 2 years if I get to this and that, and then 2x in 3-4 years if I get to this and that. So that there's the price and there's the structure. The structure is sometimes we spend much more time on getting to the right structure for that particular client than talking about the price. The market sets the price. And that's why when we start the process and the clients ask us, like, what's the value of my business? So we can tell them, like Michal said earlier, we can tell them, based on the last transactions that we've done on businesses that are quite similar to yours, we can say that it's between this and that. But the reality is that, every transaction we do, we kind of beat our record and push it up and get to another multiple that we haven't even thought we could get to. So the market speaks by itself. You just need to have the market. You just need to touch the market and just need to touch all the markets.
And maybe to add just one aspect to that, okay? To complete this, the philosophy behind this process. there is no index in the market, okay? There is no objective place where you can go and really find out how much your business is worth. It's not, and there is no exchange here, right? So actually, I think that everyone appreciates the wisdom of the crowd. And when I say everyone, it's us, Fortunate, or a consultant like us. It's the seller, of course, that learns from the market how his business is viewed, but also the buyers that are participating in an auction process. They respect themselves as well, the wisdom of the crowd. They get a better understanding on how others view a certain business from such a process. So it's not only a mechanism. It is for the most important reason why to conduct such a process, of course, is to get the best valuation. But it's not only a mechanism for that purpose. It is also a highly educational process that leads to the best result, that balances between the strength and powers in the market and lead to the right price and valuation.
That's excellent. Backing up just a little bit, we have a clarification question about, so there's smart P&L, get your ducks in a row, and then you present the business to the market before you start the auction, or that's how you present your business?
No, before we start the auction, you prepare it, and then that's what we distribute to all the buyers.
Okay. So they prepare a presentation, and then you would find all eligible interested.
We prepare that.
You prepare the presentation.
Right.
We prepare everything.
It's that's probably one of the most challenging part of of the preparation, finding where the business is, where the strength of that business, what the buyer could do with it, the advantages of that business, and present everything to the buyer. And by the way, the buyers themselves also, they tell us they love our presentation because it includes so much information. They can decide like that. I mean, everything is there. They can just say yes or no. So preparing that is a very important part, and you want to make sure that whoever represents you, or if you represent yourself, everything is in that presentation, and you tell the story of the business. Every business has a story. So you don't want to miss that, or you don't want to have your buyer tell you the story of your business.
That's an excellent response. I think that we have way too many questions to get through in 3 minutes. So if you have an objection to me sending your question to Yael and Michal, tell me in the chat right now. But if you've got if you've got an open question, they would be happy to answer it, and I can definitely send these questions to them. Obviously, this is a huge topic. Obviously, it depends on your business. It depends on your buyer or the group of potential buyers. There could be certain defining factors, certain fantastic things about your business that factor in that aren't the regular things. And I suggest that you ask for advice, because I know that that kind of decision is a huge decision, and you don't want to take it lightly, and you don't want to get less than your value. And we were going to get to creative ways to increase your value, but we didn't quite get to that. So hopefully we can cover that in the recap. But the ladies of Fortunate, thank you so much. Andy, thank you for joining us today. Thank you to all the people who joined us for a rare 10 a.m. webinar. I think we're going to do more of these. But if you've got questions for Yael and Michal, we will be providing contact information, a link to their website, how to connect with their company on social media, so that you can get the advice that you need in order to make good decisions about this very important thing. So thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks
we'll
very
see
much.
you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. That's fun.
Nice defining